Welcome back to the bullshit filter, Ray.
Very happy to be here. How are you doing? How's it going?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how baked are you today?
No, I'm not. I'm not currently baked, but about 55 minutes, I'm going to make even less sense. So let's get the show on the road. 420, baby. Anyway, how are you doing? Do you need anything to distract you, or using your physical training to deal with life's woes? Yeah,
it's just using my chi. My chi.
All right, that's good.
This is episode 6 of our fascism miniseries. In our last episode, we talked about the rise of fascism in Spain under General Franco and how he survived after World War II, kept going until 1975, and it sort of morphed from after the crushing of fascism in Italy and Germany. You couldn't really brand yourself as out-and-out fascist anymore. So he kind of just morphed it into a Catholic dictatorship, basically. Pro-West, pro-capitalist, Cold War era, Christian, theocratic dictatorship.
But here's the problem. After World War II, like you just said, you can't really openly say that you're a fascist. That's the equivalent of, clubbing 2 baby seals to death with a hammer in each hand while humming the Al-Qaeda national anthem. You can think those things, but you can't say it anymore. But the thing that really gets me, this is what I hate about history, sometimes it's too general. Just because the fascists lose the war doesn't mean they're not fascists out there. Remember, these are people that genuinely, to their way of thinking, saw problems. They had a solution for solving their problems, which were some of the, if not all of the tenets of fascism. So after the war, yes, America and France and Soviet Union and the UK are going to own Germany for a while, and they're going to get rid of some Nazis, but fascists are still around. Their ideas are still around. More importantly, or most importantly, their fears, or the things that they think that need to be changed, are still around. So they're still around. They're just staying quiet for a while.
So you're right. And the underlying motivations that resulted in fascism in the early 20th century obviously didn't go away. The underlying fears, the underlying concerns that various elements of society had didn't go away. Had the Nuremberg trials, famously, the words "never again" echoed through Europe. Liberal democracy claimed victory. But ideas don't die by proclamation. They hibernate. They go underground. They morph. And beneath the rubble of World War II, fascism's basic instincts, its hunger for order, for myth, for belonging, waited for new hosts to emerge. And what followed wasn't a rebirth by swastikas, but it metamorphosized into suits and sermons and militias and secret files and dog whistle terminology.
Yeah. I think it's interesting.
There are good people on both sides.
I did not know that until he said that. Remember the examples that we used when we were, not so much Mussolini because he marched on Rome, even though the king did offer to give him, you form a government. But like with Hitler, he did legally, even though he was breaking the laws left and right with his brown shirts busting heads in the streets, he did come to power legally. He did alter the law legally using the law. And now to me, this is almost like I don't know about a smaller, but a different version of that. So fascists are going, okay, so we can't have brown shirts out in the streets busting heads. We can't do all the things we'd like to do, but we can work within the confines of whatever this post-war structure is, and getting people in the right places, whether it's judges or whether it's people in parliaments. Let's do it. Let's do what we can while we can with what we have within the law and see if we can gradually change things. So again, like you said, fascists are still there. They just have a new MO because it's required in these new times.
And then you had places that survived, like apartheid South
Good point.
Africa, that on the surface had all of the trappings of fascism. It was, a single party state, political repression, pervasive censorship, secret police, cult of security, biologically defined enemy within, all of those sorts of things. But I think the big difference between apartheid South Africa and fascism is the fascists had this mythology about remaking the country into the glory of what it should have been. Apartheid South Africa just maintained the previous white nationalism that they'd had. It was about keeping that stable, not having to rebuild it. But you did have Antonio Salazar in Portugal that we haven't really mentioned. He had been dictator from 1932 to 1968.
Good for him.
Interesting guy. Unlike Franco, not a soldier. He was a political economy professor, but was also anti-communist, pro-Catholic, ran a dictatorship, which lasted for 48 years until 1974, around about the same time as in Spain. Yeah. But also, like Franco after World War II, realized that fascist rhetoric was radioactive, so scrubbed the aesthetics, but kept the machinery in place, political police, the church as an ideological partner, censorship, corporatism, rebranded themselves as Catholic conservatives, safeguarding Western civilization from communism. And Washington and the Vatican, who were desperate for anti-Soviet allies, looked the other way. And the message was clear. If you call yourself order and anti-communist, Western democracies will forgive almost anything. And so that was the big thing that happened after World War II, as we ended up in the Cold War. Fascism was obviously a dirty word. The West then turned socialism into a dirty word by pointing to the extremes of Stalin and his successors, by pointing to the extremes of Mao, later on by making up lies about Fidel and Che, and pointing to North Korea, pointing to Vietnam, etc., etc. So the West was able to successfully keep socialism at bay to a large extent in their countries. And if we recognize that the root causes of fascism seem to be a reaction by the wealthy elite and the Christian elite against the rise of socialism in their countries, if you can keep the rise of socialism at bay through fear and propaganda and McCarthyism and all of that sort of stuff, you don't need fascism.
Can I ask a question? Right? Can you use that same sentence but take out I can't remember what the word was, but put in equality. So I can be not rich, but I'm white. I take advantage of being white. Life's pretty good to me. And I see that other people in my country, not white, are rising up. They're getting more rights, DEI, whatever you want to call it. So so the elites can fight back against change. If you're not an elite, but you're still part of the majority, racially speaking, you can still not like the perceived changes that are coming with other races are getting the rights the way you had them. And so you do have your own reason to fight back. You're going to be sold a bill of goods by the elites who want you to fight for their reasons. But again, it's all the same thing. I don't know if is it just people don't like change. It scares them. It's not what I know. It's not the land of my fathers. And so I feel this need to react, sometimes violent.
Yeah, look, people do fear change, and we all have levels of xenophobia hardwired into us. Neuroscientists have looked at the brain and how parts of the amygdala light up when we're confronted with somebody who doesn't look like us, different skin color, different facial features. But we also know that can be, you can train your brain not to react that way. If you end up with lots of friends of a different race, your brain doesn't light up that way anymore. But it's kind of hardwired into us by evolution for good reasons, thousands of years ago, right? But yeah, so people do have that, but it's fascism is an attempt by the elites, the business elites and the Christian elites, to weaponize those things, fear of change, fear of the other, into a political movement against socialism and progressive politics, because it threatens the power base of the elites and the Christians. The rise of socialism goes hand in hand with the rise of secular beliefs, atheism, etc., and that's very threatening to the Christians, and they want a Christian theocracy at the end of the day. Well, all Christians, deep down, want a Christian theocracy.
Yeah, if they are Christians, why would you not want everybody to be forced to live by, according to you, the word of God? How would you not want that? So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question is only how far do you think you can get with pushing that? How much can you get away with? So I want to talk about the rise of the new right in Europe in the second half of the 20th century. So the word fascist has become untenable, but in Italy it evolved into something called the Movimento Sociale Italiano. They traded black shirts for grey suits, and it sort of corporatized. It became, well, we're just a political party that, is more conservative, and, we believe in traditional family values. In France, you had this movement called the Poujadiste movement. It was sort of small business resentment. It was a far-right political movement based around small business resentment. There was a guy called Pouillard who refused to pay. I think he owned like a small bookstore, and he refused to pay his taxes. And, the small business owners raised up against him. That morphed over decades into the Front National, led by Jean-Marie Le Pen, 1972, now run by his daughter, Marine Le Pen, who Elon Musk is a big supporter of. And it was renamed as the National Rally Party. In 2015, her father was suspended from the party after refusing to attend his disciplinary hearing for repeating his description of the Nazi gas chambers used in concentration camps during the Holocaust as just a detail of World War II, and speaking favorably of Marshal Pétain as a Nazi collaborator. Fun story about the Le Pen family. Jean-Marie Le Pen was married to Pierrette Le Pen, a former model. In 1972, she left him due to his extremist views when he formed this right-wing political party. 16 years later, in a 1987 interview with Playboy magazine, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who had been refusing to pay her alimony, said if she needs any money, all she has to do is clean. She then accepted an offer from Playboy to pose semi-nude in a maid's outfit in the magazine.
Brilliant.
Under the title, Madame Le Pen doing the cleaning while naked.
That's revenge right there.
And then her children denounced her because they're all far-right wackadoodles. Jeez. But I think they finally made peace with her in recent years. But But he got kicked out of the party for saying gas chambers. No big deal.
I watched a couple of videos of that, and out of the totality that is World War II. I mean, and he said something like you get 1,000-page book, and the Holocaust is only two pages in a book, so it's just a detail. Technically, That's an accurate statement. However, when millions of people die or are brutally murdered, maybe you shouldn't say it's just a detail. He's purposefully being inflammatory, being an asshole, and some of the other stuff that he said. So yeah, again, what's the term? Dog whistle, whatever. He's making it okay for other people in his country who follow him to think like he does, and it's okay because if he does it, it must be okay. So he's a dick.
Hmm. And that's one of the things that we're going to see, like one of the tactics, and Charlie Kirk was a master of this. One of the tactics that the far right has learned to perfect, and Trump is also a master of this, is saying horrible things, but saying them in a way where you've got a little bit of deniability.
And when the person reacts, you can go, I'm the victim. What are you coming at me for? I'm just sharing my opinion or whatever, you know. It's easy to bait people. Sorry, go ahead.
So these far-right groups stop talking about building empires or racial purity, but instead talked about taxes and crime that was rising because of immigration.
Yeah.
And authentic Frenchman was a Le Pen term. You know, they were criticizing immigration into their countries and saying that it caused crime and, you know, that we were giving them, these immigrants, money, et cetera, ignoring the fact that the immigration was caused by their colonial practices. The reason there were lots of African people in France is because France occupied Africa, raped and pillaged the African economy for generations. The people were left with nothing. They were eventually given French citizenship. They moved to France. And now we're complaining about the fact that we've destroyed their countries and they want to come here for a better life. Same thing with the Americans and Mexico and other Latin American countries. We rape and pillage these countries for a century plus. Sure. And then when they come here to try and survive, we go, fuck you, immigrant.
Go back to your own country. Fix all the problems there. And they're like, hey, Bendejo, you're the one who caused all the problems. So yeah, I wish somebody could teach history like it was almost like a 3D spider web. Everything is connected to everything else. And you have to ask yourself, why are they coming here?
If only people did podcasts like that.
I don't know why they don't.
What is wrong with people?
So
the right wing learned that you could insert fascist emotions into democratic politics by wrapping them up in populist ideas. It's always easy to blame your problems on immigrants instead of the real underlying causes. It's like I've said on this show over the years, Americans saying, oh, China stole all of our jobs. Trump says China stole our jobs. No, you exported all of your manufacturing
willingly,
capabilities to China, taught them how to do it, funded them to do it with no pushback from either major political party, really. And then all of a sudden, a couple of decades later, you go, holy shit,
we don't make
anything and we don't make anything anymore. They stole our jobs. No,
you gave
that's not what happened.
Bitch. Sorry.
You begged them to take those jobs so you could make more profit.
Exactly.
So people are hardwired, as I said earlier, to fear others, the xenophobia thing. And demagogues basically figure out how to weaponize that rather than educate and explain the real causes. They take these things that are bubbling under the surface. People are angry and they figure out how to blame immigration for that, or blame DEI, or blame woke policies, or blame socialism, or blame whatever. They're taking your jobs, they're changing your culture, they're moving into your neighborhood, keeps the signal, fear signal looping in your brain. It's basically fascism with a costume change, right?
Yes.
We wear a suit, we say the same things, slightly toned down, but it's about anti-socialism, anti-progressive thinking, anti racial minorities. It's the same messaging, just branded as conservative.
I was going to say, as long as you
politics.
don't have the brown shirts, as long as you're not willing to do the salute, as long as you're not burning books, but in America, we ban books now. Yeah, as long as you're not doing any of the overt things, you can get away with it. And you know what really helps when you're a fascist in modern era and you're trying to get away with shit is how should I put this? The not improvement of the American education system. When the people that you're working on are gullible as fuck, it makes your job a lot easier.
And the education system, supported, funded, designed by the corporate/Christian elite to push a certain agenda. And whenever people on the left try and moderate that to teach the truth, it gets called radical leftists and wokeism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Trying to fight back against the sort of right mythology version of history. And so the other thing that happened in the 20th century, late 20th century, is obviously, as I said before, the Cold War. And as we know, because we've talked about things like Operation Gladio on our shows over the years, Western intelligence agencies deliberately and quietly hired and rehabilitated thousands of former Nazis and Nazi collaborators for their expertise against the Soviets. Rocket scientist Werner von Braun on down. Police officials, propagandists were put to work both in the United States but also in stay-behind networks in Europe. You had ex-fascists who were literally paid by Western intelligence agencies to keep working in their own countries with their existing fascist networks against communism and socialism and communist and socialist parties in those countries. So the fascists weren't crushed and wiped out. They were quietly funded and supported. Just keep it on the down low.
Exactly.
Keep doing what you're doing.
No, you're doing great.
Yeah.
Doing great. But the threat of communism is so bad, I'm going to have to keep you on the payroll as opposed to putting your ass in jail for the next 40 years. And I know you've covered, you've pretty much said this, I think, without actually saying it, but the irony of the Cold War giving to any degree cover for the neo-fascists or for the fascists that stuck around after the war. Because like you said, all they have to do is, I could not be more anti-communist than I am right now. And America would go, ooh, here's some guns. Ooh, here's some money or whatever. I mean, it's just what we did after World War II during the Cold War. But again, if the relations between the West and the Soviet Union had ended better, maybe they wouldn't have had so much cover. But yeah, we bankrolled a lot of dictators who did a lot of horrible things to their own people in the name of fighting the Cold War. And that's on us. But again, it did give the fascists a bit of cover that they might not have had if World War II had ended differently. Yeah,
more than a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it was wholesale violence in Latin America supported by the West, particularly the United States, Pinochet's Chile, Videla's Argentina, Brazilian generals, all invoking national security to justify torture and disappearances against anyone with leftist philosophies, priests, nuns, teachers, socialists of any kind were just executed en masse with the support of the West. So these were fascists basically given carte blanche, funded, given democratic air cover in the democratic Western media, et cetera, for decades under Thatcher and Reagan, and then continuing. Like, it never really stopped. Didn't matter who the administration was.
That's it. Yeah.
By the 1970s, fascism had split into two species, if you like. You had the skinhead version, the gutter version of fascism, and the salon, highly refined version. So on the streets, you had skinheads and neo-Nazis reviving fascist symbols as forms of rebellion, music, violence, tribal identity for alienated youth. particularly in places like the UK. They're still trying to recover from World War II and the collapse of the British Empire economically. Thatcher comes in and brings her own form of economic
Austerity.
repression.
Yeah.
And austerity. People the youth are poor, they're angry, and they're using swastikas tattooed on their foreheads as a form of moral rebellion. Then in academic circles, you have in France people like Alain de Benoit, who was sort of recasting fascist thought as metapolitics. He founded something called the Nouvelle Droite, France's new right movement. He spoke of defending European identity. Didn't talk about Aryan blood, but talked about cultural differences, protecting our cultural heritage from these immigrants trying to come in with their own cultures and change our French culture. He was interesting, though. He was opposed to Christianity, opposed to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. He was opposed to neoliberalism, opposed to representative democracy, egalitarianism, opposed to the United States. He's still alive, by the way, de Benoit. Apparently owns the largest private library in France, somewhere like 200 to 250,000 books in his private library.
Sorry, that slipped out. Sorry.
But across Europe, you had new magazines and new right-wing think tanks that started to preach a similar story, how liberal democracies had dissolved tradition, and there was this influx of immigrants who were changing the culture. There was this new talk about heritage and identity and authenticity, about our culture and our people. It was fascism disguised as philosophy, really. Again, it's got it. These magazines and think tanks and academics are supported by the wealthy elite and the church in many cases to fight back against the rise of progressive thinking, socialism, the idea of equality, the idea of ending colonial wars, the end of more economic equality, higher taxes, etc.
And I love it when they use the word patriot. It's like they've got you because you can't say something bad against your country, right? And so, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, they almost make it sound like this is love of country. This is not fascism. This is love of my countrymen. What they're not saying is only certain types of my countrymen. Things like we give, what was it, Argentina? We give them $40 billion and we ignore our own farmers. And again, you would like to think one day people will catch on to this stuff. But again, the point you're trying to make is they're using different words, but they're getting across the same ideas as decades ago.
And then the sort of economic fears that people had coming out of World War I and in the Great Depression, people now have as a result of globalization, mass migration, the manufacturing being moved offshore, all of these sorts of things. So people in the West are fearing for their economic future. Rents are going up, prices are going up, incomes aren't going up, and people are scared and angry, and instead of digging and uncovering the real roots of that, which is the rich elite have fucked you over yet again, the fascists are able to corral that fear and anger into fear of immigration, fear of the other, fear of things changing, socialism, equality, DEI, wokeism, it's whatever name you want to put on it.
And they get you all worked up. They get you fighting, maybe literally in the streets, but they certainly get you hopefully out and voting for their person. So they can, again, once they get in control of Congress or wherever, they can change the laws. They can make the laws. They appoint judges. The judges approve these laws, as we're seeing the benefits of what Trump has been able to get through with the Republicans working on the Supreme Court low these many years. So again, it's they get you to act for them one way or the other.
And regimes rose up in places like Hungary and Turkey, Orban, Erdogan, Putin in
Right.
Russia, where you have a humiliated nation, a corrupt elite, and somebody who comes in as the savior who's going to tell it like it is. Often it's populist rhetoric. They're just tapping into these inherent fears that people have. We're going to drain the
Yeah.
swamp and then put in more swamp rats, our
better
own
swamp.
rats.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, they're able to tap into these fears and weaponize them to their own means. And because people aren't well educated and don't read history and really aren't being given good frameworks for understanding what's going on, because all of our education system and media is designed by the elite to support their power structure. It's, even though there are people like Chomsky who worked for decades to undermine that and spread a different narrative, you're fighting shit uphill. Yeah, really. There's a couple of lone voices, billions, going up against hundreds of billions in dollars of propaganda every year. Then online, obviously, you had the alt-right, the libertarians, the Tea Party, and various iterations of that around the world. Lot farms spreading memes and ideas that are creating easily digestible narratives, blaming it on, the corrupt UN or the corrupt this or corrupt climate scientists or corrupt whatever it is, getting people angry and focused in the wrong areas. So fascism didn't go away after World War II. It just put on a suit and
a nice one,
changed its terminology slightly. But at the end of the day, it's still about those same two core drivers. It's the rich elite fearing that socialism is going to come and degrade their control over their wealth and power, and the church fearing that the rise of progressive thinking is going to degrade their power base as people move further and further away from religion.
Yeah. I like the fact, just real quick, tongue in cheek, instead of someone yelling, foaming at the mouth, now they give you better big words that have maybe 2 or 3 syllables in it, and they sincerely bite their lip. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I mean, it's a more sophisticated selling of the same ideas. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But in essence, I think this is the thing to understand about fascism is it's Christianity's response to socialism and the elite's response to socialism. When it feels like progressive politics is becoming too successful. And what we saw in the US, if you go back to the 99% Wall Street, wasn't a riot. What would you call it? It was Occupy Wall Street is sort of the sit-in during Obama's years, which Obama crushed. And then, so that idea that took off after the GFC, this Occupy Wall Street thing about how capitalism was broken. I've said, I've been banging on about the evils of capitalism since I started to learn more about this when I was in my 20s, right? My story, I was like right wing, not ultra right, but right wing, pro conservative voter in my early 20s through to my mid 20s until I started to read more. And then, started to read more history, started to read Chomsky, started to think more deeply about it and realized that I was missing a whole section of the story. But I've seen this happen where in the 90s, people like socialism and anti-capitalist messaging was just still sort of laughed at through to the 9/11 wars. I remember in the 90s, if you talk to people about wars being based around oil, they would kind of look at you like you were wearing a
Right,
alfoil hat.
right.
Then after sort of the
Yeah.
Iraq invasion after
All oil.
9/11, the narrative became more mainstream. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is about
Yeah.
oil. You know, we're taking Afghanistan and Iraq
A
because
lot
it's
of it.
about oil. WMD is just a lie. It's about oil, control of oil. All of a sudden, that was acceptable to say. Then after the GFC in the late 2000s, the fact that capitalism was inherently broken started to become acceptable in the mainstream. People were saying it. It was in the mainstream media. That narrative would have been kept out of the New York Times 10 years earlier. Now it was acceptable. Then you had the rise of Bernie Sanders, and he was proudly wearing the title of socialist. And you had young generations going, yeah, okay, maybe I can say I'm a socialist. You know, in America, to call yourself a socialist 20 years ago, you would have been shot on sight.
Yeah.
And yeah, all of a sudden in the last 10 years, Bernie, AOC, now you would have been shot on sight.
Yeah.
And yeah, all of a sudden in the last 10 years, Bernie, AOC, now you got Mamdani running in New York for mayor. All
People
of a sudden, it's not only okay, Mamdani looks like he's going to win, like against Cuomo. So you go, holy shit! Like the rise of progressive politics and progressive thinking, anyway, is becoming acceptable in the West, more acceptable than it has been since the beginning of the Cold War, and that's a huge threat to the elites and the Christian
absolutely,
power bases.
and not to take, as far as America, not to take any credit away from people for thinking outside the box, for thinking new thoughts. Not they should be applauded for that, because that's how you solve problems, is different lines of thought. But the other part of that, the more negative part of that, is it's just so, in some areas, so fucking bad and so stressful and so expensive to live. It's like someone says, "Oh, if someone says to me, you're socialist." Hey, yeah, whatever rocks your boat, because if things are so stressful now, I'm not going to be worried about the sanctity of the American culture to get mad at you. So again, what we've said this from the very beginning, what fascists really like and what they really could use is bad economic news. And again, they know how to use it, but hopefully others will use it as well. But again, it's just something to watch out for. But people are desperately reaching out for anything. And if they reach for something to the left as opposed to something to the right, who says that's a bad thing?
In his book, What is Fascism and How to Fight It, Trotsky, 1931, argued that fascism wasn't just a mass movement of angry little men with flags. It was a counter-revolutionary coalition. When threatened elites and traditional institutions, industrialists, landlords, and the church, bankrolled and legitimized a violent mass movement to smash the organized left. When capitalism's usual safeguards, the police, the courts, the press, the pulpit, become unable to contain working class militancy or socialist reforms, the ruling class throws open the gates of civil war and steps up their efforts to crush it through violence, not necessarily violence with a gun. It can be other forms of violence. It can be economic violence. We're taking away your food stamps.
Which we are.
Where it can be judicial violence. We're throwing you in prisons. It can be other forms of violence. It's not necessarily just brown shirts in the street beating people up, right?
There's many ways.
The far right becomes the blunt instrument of restoration of power for the ruling class. Trotsky saw it as a class reflex. Fascism bases itself on the petty bourgeoisie, but it serves finance capital, is the way that Trotsky put it. The middle class, who get ruined by the crisis that the country's going to, provide the street energy. There's a lot more of them than there are of the ruling class, and the ruling class don't want to get their hands dirty. So the upper classes provide the funding and the political cover. Religion provides the moral authority. And the result is a regime that destroys unions, political parties, civic freedoms, not to create chaos, but to rebuild a disciplined society that's safe for property and hierarchy and religion.
The right people. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. For the ruling classes, the current ruling classes, right?
Just in different forms.
And the rhetoric changes. Today it's wokeness or globalism instead of Bolshevism, but the function is the same. When progressive movements threaten entrenched power, reactionary elites outsource the crackdown to populist zealots, then pretend to be shocked when it turns violent.
Oh my God, I did not see that coming. He was such a good guy. I can't believe he shot up that kind of stuff. Can I just say real quick, and I'm not that I'm trying to end this, but I guess one of the things that would help people to do, because the packaging of neo-fascism has gotten so good. It's gotten so slick. It's gotten so subtle. When you look out for things like hostility to liberal democracy, the whole cult of personality, nostalgia for a day that has passed. When you hear those things, those should be your, what is it? The dog whistles are, those should be the warning words that this person probably further to the right than you are, or whatever. But again, you have to read between the lines now, because they've just gotten so good at it.
Yeah. So I guess, where does that leave us? I mean, I don't know that we need to draw the parallels between the United States today and all of this, because I think it's pretty self-evident, right?
It should be.
On Fox and on
Newsmax or whatever,
Talkback Radio under Rush Limbaugh in his day. For decades, we've seen Christians complaining about Starbucks putting Happy Holidays on coffee cups instead of Merry Christmas. They're all of this fake war against Christianity thing. The victimhood, the fake victimhood of Christians and white people in the United States. Oh, they're coming for us. It's our lives are so bad. My favorite is,
I can't say Merry Christmas. I have to say Happy Holidays. That especially when you work at Walmart, you hear that. I should be able to say whatever I want anyway, but it's just another example of they're the victims. The Christians are the victims. Sorry.
Yeah, this whole mythic nationalism, the cult of personality around Trump, contempt for the truth. And, I remember going back to Bush Jr., like he had this whole fight against truthiness, as he would call it. This contempt for facts, and we've seen the rise of the anti-climate change groups. I've been having a debate with a guy I went to high school with, I think, on Facebook the last couple of days. Just this insane level of denialism that's still going on. There's no evidence that humans are causing climate change, and there's not a single scientist that says that. I'm like, dude, seriously, what the fuck are you reading? And then I thought, yeah, look, I went to high school with this guy. I'll engage with him, and I'm like, okay, give me your sources. And he'd give me his sources, and I just completely eviscerate his sources, and then he would just switch to a different argument and a different thing, and it's like whack-a-mole thing. Yeah, well, it's...
Jeez. Have we done...
It's just the inability to have a conversation.
Have we done climate change? I know we've done a couple of topics. Should we do climate, just to put it to bed?
I did climate change, no illusions, I don't know, 15 years
just
ago.
Throwing it out,
Yeah. I don't know, man. Yeah,
it should
possibly.
Be self-evident.
But the point is that contempt for truth, and as I always say on this show, epistemology and heuristics, you got to figure out, because I'm not an expert on any of these topics, but you have to go, okay, how do we know what is true in this domain, and who are the experts that can be trusted? to tell me what's really going on in this domain. Having a model, having a framework for figuring out what's likely to be going on is critical, but we don't have it. I do hope that ChatGPT will one day be that, but yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I think the parallels with the United States are clear enough. It's a pushback against progressive thinking and a pushback against secular thinking. The alliance of the wealthy elite, the middle class who are kind of wealthy, but not quite the ruling class, but they want to be, and they align with the ruling class. And the poor people that are angry and don't know why, and they'll just jump on a bandwagon that gives them easy answers and something to channel their anger into. And the Christian elite that are worried that people might be waking up that Christianity is bullshit. A coalition of those groups comes together and decides that they need some sort of a personality cult with the threat of violence in one or another form to pull the country into line again. I think it's quite obvious that that's what's happening in the United States. So I'm happy to declare my conclusion that yes, MAGA is fascist. The United States is going fascist. Is fascist. It's in the midst of becoming a fascist. It's not a single state party yet. It's not a dictatorship yet, but Trump is signing decrees left, right, and center, coming up with tariffs left, right, and center, shut down the federal government because there's no money. Everything is playing out exactly as you would expect it to. Without a military coup, it's just he's dismantling the mechanisms of a liberal democracy, ignoring the courts, ignoring Congress, dismantling Congress, just signing things into decree. It's all there, but the final step has yet to be taken.
We'll see what happens
when he declares himself emperor.
Yeah, that'll be in the third term.
And then the other question is what happens after he dies. When Franco died, when Salazar died, Spain and Portugal became democracies, but that was after 40 years of fascist oppression. Remains to be seen, what will happen if Trump dies.
I think the real question is there anybody on the Republican side or anybody anywhere that the people that love and follow Trump would follow this new person as much? And I think the answer is no. Not that I've seen anybody, but that's the
Joe Rogan. Yeah. It'll be Joe Rogan. It'll be Alex Jones. It could be. I thought it would be Rush Limbaugh before Trump. I always thought it would be Rush Limbaugh who would be the guy, but he died. Well, Trump took over and then he died.
People are going to try. Don't get me wrong. Because.
But dude, no one saw Trump coming until 2015 either, right? Trump came out of nowhere. Yeah. If you'd said to somebody in 2015, Trump's going to be president for 4 years, then he'll be gone, then he'll come back and he'll have this massive cult.
They'd be like, get the fuck out of here.
No one would have taken you seriously.
You're fired. Yeah. You never know, right?
Yeah. You never know. When people are desperate, they will turn. Could. Okay, now that's ridiculous. But yes. All right, that's it. I'm out.
I got a shot.